I want you to just sit with this premise for a second. Imagine a society that has virtually eradicated extreme physical poverty.
Right, which is huge on its own.
Exactly. I mean, we're talking about wiping out the grinding reality of material deprivation.
Mm.
No more lacking a reliable roof or, clean drinking water or electricity.
It's essentially gone.
Gone. And then, if that isn't enough to grab your attention, layer onto that an educational system where over 98% of both men and women have at least some secondary education.
Which is just mathematically staggering.
Right. So on paper, it sounds like this highly developed utopian society, right?
Mm.
But here is the massive contradiction we are exploring in today's deep dive.
The hidden costs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If this society is so incredibly rich, so perfectly educated, and has conquered extreme poverty, why on earth are its citizens dying years earlier than the global average?
Yeah, it's the ultimate developmental paradox. And whenever we encounter numbers that look this perfect in the social sciences, our immediate reflex has to be, what's paying for this?
Someone always pays the bill.
Exactly. And today we are unpacking this highly granular, beautifully designed data report on Turkmenistan's human development. And I actually love the design of this report because it sets the tone perfectly.
Oh, it's striking. Very minimalist.
Very. It's this pure white background, academic minimalist style. They use these muted Morandi colors, no flashy 3D graphics, just pure data.
Yeah, with those really distinct red annotations.
Right. And on the very first page, the cover, they set up this visual of a massive balance scale. It's just a simple graphic, but it hits hard.
Because it visually lays out that contradiction we just talked about.
Exactly. On the left side of the scale, in this calm green color, you have the utopian data. The 98.1% female secondary education, and a multidimensional poverty index, or MPI, that is effectively 0.
0.001, to be exact.
Right. It's heavy with genuine progress,
Yeah.
but then there's a huge, bold red arrow pointing to the right side of the scale, the gray side.
The dystopian shadow.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And over there, you see a shocking 19.3% inequality rate in life expectancy. And right next to it, a massive carbon footprint of nearly 10 tons of CO2 per person.
Wow. So beneath this shiny surface of high education and low poverty, they are paying a massive hidden health and environmental price.
They absolutely are. So our mission today is to figure out how these two realities coexist.
Okay, well, to understand why the engine is burning so much oil, we first need to look at how they built the engine, right? Let's start with the macro picture.
Yeah, let's turn to page 2 of the report. It shows their Human Development Index, the HDI.
And just for the listener, HDI isn't just GDP. It's a blend of wealth, life expectancy, and education. It's the baseline of human existence.
Exactly. And the chart they use here is just a smooth line graph from 2005 to 2023. The dark blue line is Turkmenistan, and there's a light gray dashed line for the global average.
And the trajectory is just relentless.
It really is. Back in 2005, their HDI was 0.653, just sitting in the middle of the pack globally. But by 2023, it climbs to 0.764.
Right, and there's a really clear annotation on the chart here.
Yeah, that thin red circle.
Exactly, a solid red circle right where the blue line crosses the gray dash line with a minimalist text box that just says, surpasses global average.
Because the global average in 2023 was 0.756. So they aren't just catching up. They are officially ahead of the curve.
But what really stands out to me on this page is just how smooth that blue line is.
Oh, for sure. No spikes.
Right. I mean, usually in resource-heavy economies, you see these violent, jagged charts. Gas prices go up, foreign money pours in, HCI spikes, then prices crash and the line plummets.
It's the classic petrostate roller coaster.
Exactly. But this line is just a steady, almost mechanical march upward, which tells me this isn't an accident.
No, it's the signature of a deliberate, centralized, long-term investment strategy. The state is taking raw wealth and stubbornly converting it into concrete, schools, and infrastructure over decades.
But okay, let's talk about that raw wealth.
Yeah.
Because you can have all the centralized planning in the world, but you can't build a national healthcare system without massive amounts of cash.
Right. Effort requires fuel. And if you flip to page 3, the report shows exactly where that fuel came from.
The gross national income, or GNI?
Yeah. And the visual here is a super clean bar chart. They just sampled 4 years, 1995, 2005, 2015, and 2023.
And they're using PPP dollars, right? Purchasing power parity.
Yes, which is crucial because it adjusts for the local cost of living. It tells us what a dollar actually buys on the ground.
Like how much bread or concrete you can actually afford.
Exactly. So in 1995, right after the Soviet collapse, their GNI per capita was at a severe low of about $5,891.
Just scraping by.
But look at the 2023 bar. It skyrockets to $17,715.
Wow.
Yeah. And the designers added this gray dashed trend line across the tops of the bars with a big arrow highlighting that massive jump.
I mean, they effectively tripled the practical wealth of the nation. It's like upgrading a car's engine from a standard commuter sedan to a high-performance sports car.
That tripling provides massive fiscal torque for social spending.
But I do have to push back a little here.
Yeah.
Averages can be incredibly deceptive, right?
Oh, absolutely.
If a billionaire walks into a dive bar, suddenly the average wealth in the room is $10 million, but the guy in the corner is still broke. So is this just a tiny elite hoarding all the gas money, or did it actually hit the streets?
It's a great question. And in a lot of petrostates, the wealth never leaves the capital. But the HDI curve we just looked at proves the money was actually deployed.
Because HDI measures population-wide education and health, not just bank accounts.
Exactly. If the elite hoarded everything, GNI would spike, but HDI would stay flat. The fact that HDI went up means the wealth actually trickled down into real social architecture.
Okay, so they deployed the cash, they upgraded the engine. Where did they get the best return on that investment?
Oh, without a doubt, education. It is the absolute cornerstone of this report. If you look at page 4, they use this really elegant dumbbell chart.
I love dumbbell charts for showing progress over time.
They're great. It plots 2 points connected by a line. And here, it's showing the mean years of schooling, which is the adult average, versus the expected years of schooling for kids entering the system today.
So it's comparing the parents to the children.
Basically, yeah. And the chart shows both of those dots moving steadily to the right from 2005 to 2023.
And by 2023, the mean years hit 11.2, right? So the average adult has basically finished high school.
Right. But there's a red circle around the dot for the expected years. It sits at 13.24.
13.2, 4 years of guaranteed education.
Exactly. The report explicitly notes that this proves the system is fundamentally stable. Citizens are guaranteed a high school education or higher, creating a highly literate workforce.
But here's where it gets really interesting for me. Average education is one thing, but how is that education distributed, especially across genders?
This is page 5. And it is arguably the most staggering data visualization in the entire document.
It's the tornado chart, right? The mirrored bar chart.
Yes. The left side shows female data. The right side shows male data. We are looking at the Gender Development Index for people 25 and older with at least some secondary education.
And the numbers are just wild.
For women, it's 98.1%. For men, it's 98.3%.
So there's basically a 0.2% difference.
Yeah. And right in the center of the chart, they put this huge, bold tag that just says, approximately zero gap. It's visually arresting.
Because it means the gender gap in secondary education has been effectively wiped off the map.
Totally eradicated.
I want the listener to really grasp how rare this is. When a developing country gets a massive influx of wealth, you usually see deep demographic fractures. The boys get sent to the new high schools, and the girls get kept home for domestic labor.
Cultural inertia is a very powerful force.
Exactly. So to achieve a gap that is effectively zero requires massive state intervention. They had to guarantee that every single child, rural or urban, male or female, was sitting at a desk.
It's an absolute triumph of social policy.
But education is just the prerequisite, right? The classroom is a very controlled environment. Does this total equality actually translate into survival and power in the real world?
That's the perfect pivot, because page 6 and 7 explore exactly that. Let's start with biological survival. Page 6 tracks maternal mortality.
Which is the ultimate stress test for any healthcare system.
Absolutely. Because you can't fake a safe delivery. You need paved roads, sterile operating rooms, cold chain storage for medicine.
You need a flawless logistical chain. If it breaks, women die.
Right. And the visual here is an area chart tracking maternal deaths per 100,000 live births. And the shape of this chart is not a gentle slope, it's a cliff.
A total free fall.
In 1990, the ratio was 72.7, which is dangerously high. But by 2023, it plummeted down to just 5.1.
Wow. And they have that big downward red arrow on the chart, right?
Yeah, with a note saying it's a decrease of over 92%.
That is just incredible. They essentially rolls out a modern healthcare infrastructure that covers the most vulnerable moments of a woman's life.
Right. They protected them in the classroom, and they protected them in the delivery room.
Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
The women are surviving childbirth, and they're graduating high school at the exact same rate as men. But are they actually making the rules?
Ah, the political empowerment question.
Right. Being a healthy, educated passenger on the ship is great, but who is sitting in the captain's chair?
And that brings us to page 7. This is where the utopian narrative hits serious friction. The designers used a waffle chart here, a 10 by 10 grid of squares representing the 100% of seats in Parliament.
I really like waffle charts for this kind of data. It makes the proportions so obvious.
Exactly. The dark squares represent women, the light gray squares represent men. In 2023, women held 25.6% of the seats.
So roughly 26 squares are dark.
Right. And there's a red dashed box drawn around those dark squares with a note pointing out that it's about a quarter of the decision-making power.
Now, to be fair, that is an improvement from 1990 when they only had about 18%.
It is a solid improvement, yes, but you can't ignore the massive sea of light gray squares on that chart. Men still hold 74.4% of the legislative power.
Which shows that translating educational parity into actual top-tier political power is an agonizingly slow, multi-generational process.
Because you aren't just building schools anymore, you are fighting entrenched historical power dynamics.
Right. The incumbent politicians don't just step down because a brilliant young woman just graduated from high school. The door is technically open, but the room itself is still fundamentally unbalanced.
Precisely. It's an evolving process.
Okay, so we've looked at the averages, the education, the wealth. But averages always hide the extremes. So what happens at the absolute bottom rung of this society?
We have to look at the Multidimensional Poverty Index, the MPI, and page 8 of the report handles this beautifully with a minimalist radar infographic.
And MPI is so much better than just asking, do you live on less than $2 a day?
Miles better. MPI measures physical reality. Do you have a dirt floor? Do you have electricity? Is your water safe? Are your kids malnourished?
It measures actual deprivation. So what are the numbers for Turkmenistan?
Based on the 2019 data, their MPI value is an astonishingly low 0.001.
I still can't get over that number.
Yeah. And the poverty headcount, the actual percentage of people living in this state of deprivation, is just 0.2%. Out of 17 comparable sample groups, they rank second.
So for you listening, what this means in plain English is that physical material poverty, lacking basic housing, power, and water, has been essentially eliminated. The state built a flawless physical safety net.
Right. The structural hardware of the country is completely saturated, but then the report zooms in on that tiny 0.2% who are still deprived.
Because they're still human beings. What are they lacking if they have electricity and water?
And this is where the radar chart is so revealing. The remaining deprivation is heavily skewed. 47.3% of it is purely nutrition-based.
Wow.
And 35.1% is tied to child mortality.
So over 80% of the remaining extreme poverty is strictly biological?
Exactly. The hardware of the country, the pipes and wires, is flawless. But the biological software ensuring complex pediatric care or a diverse diet in an isolated village still has these stubborn blind spots.
You can't just pour concrete to fix malnutrition.
Exactly. It requires a totally different kind of continuous medical intervention.
And that minor crack in the biological data leads us directly to the massive turning point of this whole deep dive.
Yeah, the tone of the report shifts entirely on page 9.
Because if they are so incredibly rich and they have no extreme material poverty and everyone is educated, why aren't they living longer?
Welcome to pain point number 1, the life expectancy deficit. The chart on page 9 compares Turkmenistan to the global average.
Let's hear the numbers.
In 2023, the global average life expectancy was 73.38 years.
Okay.
Turkmenistan's average was only 70.07 years.
So they're over 3 years behind the global average.
Yeah. And the chart has this big red double arrow spanning the gap between the two bars, explicitly labeling it a massive life expectancy deficit.
Which is just wild when you think about their wealth. I mean, we talked about health conversion efficiency, right?
Right. How well a country turns cash into lifespan.
Exactly. If you triple your wealth to 17 grand a person, you should be buying a lifespan closer to 75 or 78 years. But their engine is just totally inefficient at converting wealth into health. Why?
To figure that out, we look at page 10, pain point number 2. And this is a highly counterintuitive phenomenon found in the inequality-adjusted HDI, the IHDI.
Which basically penalizes a country if all the good stuff is hoarded by one group.
Right. And the visual here is a super high contrast comparison. On one side, you have the inequality in education. Remember how we said everyone goes to school equally?
Yeah, the gender gap was basically zero.
Well, the overall educational inequality across the whole population is just 2.9%. It's incredibly low.
Okay, so education is evenly distributed. What about life expectancy?
19.3%.
19.3% inequality in life expectancy.
And they drew a thick red box around that number on the page, labeling it the bottom risk pool.
Oh my God. What's fascinating here is that while you are guaranteed a desk in a classroom and you are guaranteed a roof over your head, your actual physical lifespan is subject to a massive, invisible lottery.
Exactly. That massive disparity reveals that a huge specific subset of the population is dying prematurely. They're dying in their 40s or 50s, while others live to 80.
And this is totally invisible if you only look at the average wealth or the school enrollment. So who is in this risk pool? Is it occupational hazards in the gas fields? Is it a rural healthcare desert?
The report doesn't give us their specific names or jobs, but mathematically, the human body is paying a severe, hidden tax in this society.
And if the human body is paying a tax, what is happening to the physical earth beneath their feet?
Which brings us to pain point number 3 on page 11, planetary pressures.
The environmental bill.
And it is a steep one. The visual is a bubble chart comparing carbon emissions. The global average for CO2 emissions is 4.53 tons per person.
Which is already high enough to cause global climate panic.
Right. Well, the bubble for Turkmenistan is more than twice that size. In 2023, their emissions hit 9.72 tons per capita.
So basically 10 tons of carbon per person per year.
Yeah. There's a giant red exclamation mark next to it reading, high carbon model over twice the global average.
Remember that sports car engine analogy I made earlier?
Yeah, the tripling of the wealth.
It turns out they are running that sports car on incredibly dirty fuel.
And it's not just the invisible gases either. If you turn to page 12, we see the physical material footprint.
Which is literally how much of the earth they are digging up.
Exactly. Ores, fossil fuels, biomass. It's a step chart tracking the last 20 years. In 1993, it was around 4.4 tons per person.
Okay.
By 2023, it surged to 11.37 tons.
Almost 12 tons of the planet extracted for every single person.
Yes. The chart circles the upward turning point, labeling it a resource-dependent economic feature.
So this paints a picture of a really heavy economic model. Their rapid development isn't based on, like, a lightweight tech or knowledge economy. It is deeply addicted to high-intensity resource extraction.
They are digging their utopia out of the ground and burning it.
So how does the international community judge a country that achieves amazing social success by totally maxing out its environmental credit card?
They penalize them. On page 13, we see the Planetary Pressures Adjusted HDI, the PHDI.
Which audits their development score for environmental damage?
Exactly. And the visual is a waterfall chart. It starts high at their nominal HDI of 0.764. But then there's this massive red highlighted block dropping downward.
The penalty deduction.
Right. Because of the carbon and material footprint, their score gets slashed by 12.69%.
That is a staggering drop.
It lands at a final PHDI of just 0.667. The report explicitly labels this drop as developmental loss due to planetary pressures.
Which essentially tells us that their current lifestyle is ecologically subsidized. It's completely unsustainable.
You can't build a permanent utopia on an environmental volcano.
Wow. Okay, so what does this all mean? We need to synthesize this.
Page 14 does exactly that. It visualizes the grand duality paradox of Turkmenistan.
How does it look?
It's a 4-quadrant matrix. The vertical y-axis is social equity, things like education and multidimensional poverty. The horizontal x-axis is sustainability and health equity, carbon footprint, and lifespan equality.
So on the y-axis, they're absolutely killing it.
Yeah, the top left quadrant is densely packed with their achievements: zero extreme poverty, total gender parity in schools, collapsed maternal mortality.
How about on the x-axis?
The bottom right quadrant is a low point: maxed out carbon emissions and a 20% vulnerability to early death.
They are a society of extreme equilibrium and extreme imbalance all at once.
Exactly.
So bringing it all together, what are the marching orders for the future? If you're the government, what do you do next?
Well, the final page, page 15, acts as a call to action. It's just pure text with three minimalist icons: a green earth with trees, a medical cross, and an upward staircase.
Very clean. What does it say?
It highlights two bolded pillars for the future. Pillar 1 is resource transition.
Because the 10-ton carbon model will bankrupt them.
Exactly. They urgently need to decouple their GDP growth from their carbon emissions and resource extraction.
And pillar 2?
Health inclusion. They need a forensic audit of their medical system. They have to figure out why a country with zero material poverty still has a 19.3% inequality in lifespan.
They have to tilt those massive healthcare resources toward the invisible, vulnerable margins. We often measure human progress by asking if people are richer and smarter than they used to be. But looking at Turkmenistan, we have to ask a harder question. If an economy guarantees you an education and a roof over your head, but funds it by burning the environment and leaving your lifespan to a lottery, is that actually high human development or just a beautifully decorated waiting room? Think about how your own country balances that scale. We'll see you next time.